On August 31, 1997, the world watched in horror as Princess Diana died. But what most people didn't know was that she had secretly written a letter to Prince William just weeks before her death. Cameras flashed, whispers filled the palace halls, and couriers raced against time, but the letter vanished. Why was it hidden for so long, and what shocking truth does it finally reveal about Diana's fears and warnings? The palace was silent. Footsteps echoed on the cold marble floors. An aide froze, staring at a small envelope tucked behind official papers. It was August 1997, just weeks before Princess Diana's tragic death. She had written a letter to her eldest son, Prince William, and no one had known it existed. The paper smelled faintly of her perfume, a gentle human touch in the vast, empty palace. Cameras outside flashed in the distance, but inside, only whispers moved through the corridors. The envelope was on Kensington Palace stationery. Every line of her handwriting was neat, careful, and deliberate. Some aides claimed they felt an urgent pressure in the air, as if Diana's voice was trying to reach them directly. Historians later said the letter seemed personal yet far-reaching, hinting at secrets she wanted William to know. She reportedly mentioned family dynamics, the weight of public life, and possible challenges he might face. The words were private, but the stakes were immense. Some drafts suggested Diana wanted William to be prepared for a world full of cameras and reporters, a world that could be harsh and unforgiving. But the full content was hidden, leaving the mystery alive. What fears did Diana reveal to William? And that detail changes what happens next. A tense hush fell over Kensington Palace. Phones buzzed and lights flickered in the quiet offices. On August 20, 1997, an aide discovered Diana's letter, just days before her tragic car accident. Footsteps rushed along hallways as staff debated what to do. Should Prince Charles be informed immediately, or should the words remain secret for now? Some froze, staring at the envelope as if it carried a warning written in invisible ink. The weight of time pressed on them. Every second felt urgent, as if the palace itself was holding its breath. The letter had been hidden among official documents, yet its discovery set off a chain of tension. Staff whispered in hushed voices, glancing at cameras flashing outside the gates. Reporters had no clue, but the aides understood that if the letter leaked, the public could see a side of Diana no one had ever witnessed. Some claimed they even considered hiding it completely, fearing the fallout. The envelope became a silent, heavy presence on a polished desk, a reminder of Diana's careful planning and deep concern for her son. Historians later reported that the letter contained advice about handling the relentless media, maintaining personal strength, and navigating the complex palace rules. Yet, its full meaning remained unclear. Whispers of a hidden warning circulated among staff, each interpretation more urgent than the last. And then there were the drafts. Some allegedly mentioned unnamed advisors and potential threats to William's privacy. The tension was tangible, almost suffocating. But the story didn't stop there. The palace itself seemed to hold secrets that only the letter could unlock. Every question raised another. Why was it kept from Charles? And what could Diana have feared so much that her words had to wait for years to be revealed? Why was the letter so secret that even Charles wasn't immediately told? But the story doesn't end there. This is where it turns. The envelope trembled slightly on the desk. A faint scent of Diana's perfume seemed to linger in the air. Staff whispered nervously as they imagined the words inside. August 1997, just weeks before her death, Princess Diana reportedly wrote to her eldest son, Prince William, with a mother's love and fear mixed together. Every sentence was deliberate. Every pause carried meaning. The palace felt tense, as if time itself was pressing down on the words she had written. Diana's letter allegedly warned William about the pressures he would face in the public eye. She mentioned the relentless attention from the media, cameras, flashing lights, and journalists chasing every step. The press, she implied, could be harsh and unkind, making small mistakes seem like major scandals. She also wrote about palace advisors, people whose advice might not always have his best interests at heart. Be careful who you trust, some drafts reportedly said, though no official confirmation exists. Historians later described it as heartbreaking and urgent, a rare insight into her protective instincts. In the letter, Diana seemed to anticipate challenges William might face with family relationships and public duties. She reportedly urged him to stay true to himself, to listen to his own heart, and to make decisions carefully. Some aides claimed they could feel the urgency even in the drafts, as if Diana's voice was speaking directly to William through the pages. Cameras outside the palace gates clicked constantly, oblivious to the hidden message inside. Here's the twist. Some lines hinted at a personal fear Diana did not share openly. A secret worry, something deeply private, that could affect the future of her son's life in ways no one would immediately understand. She wrote with care, underlining words for emphasis, as if knowing that her advice might become a guide for years to come. The urgency in her tone suggested she wanted William to understand quickly, before events could spiral beyond her control. The tension in the palace corridors reflected the stakes of the letter itself. Each aide who read it understood that these were not ordinary words. They carried a mother's protection, foresight, and love. What secret fear was Diana most worried about? And that fear sets the stage for a shocking revelation later. Footsteps echoed through the silent corridors of Kensington Palace. An aide paused, glancing nervously at the empty desk where the envelope had been just moments ago. The letter, carefully written by Princess Diana in August 1997, had vanished. Cameras clicked outside the gates, capturing tourists and reporters who had no idea what was missing inside. Rumors began to swirl. Had someone taken it? Or was it simply misplaced amid the hundreds of documents stored in the royal archives? Time felt urgent, almost suffocating, as palace staff tried to trace its location. The envelope reportedly disappeared soon after Diana's funeral. Some staff claimed it was stored in the royal archives, hidden under piles of official papers and files. Others whispered that it may have been deliberately withheld, to protect Prince William or perhaps to prevent a public scandal. Every conversation inside the palace was hushed, every glance over the shoulder filled with tension. Journalists and palace watchers outside speculated endlessly, but no official confirmation was ever released about who controlled the letter or why it was kept secret. The palace itself became a labyrinth of whispered secrets. Staff debated whether the letter contained warnings that could disrupt public perception, or advice that was too personal to share. Some aides reportedly feared that revealing it too early might harm William, while others argued it was too important to hide. The uncertainty created a tense environment. The very walls seemed to hold their breath as the envelope remained out of sight. Here's the twist. Even when the letter was believed to be safely tucked away in private archives, rumors persisted. Journalists and insiders claimed they had glimpsed references to it in palace memos or in the hands of trusted advisors. Each claim raised more questions than answers. The sense of urgency never faded. People whispered about hidden fears, the shadow of Diana's warnings, and the unknown decisions that might have been influenced by its contents. Why had the letter been kept from Prince Charles initially? And who ultimately had the authority to control such a personal yet potentially explosive document? The mystery grew with each passing year. Some insiders suggested that the real power lay not in the archives themselves, but in the hands of a few key palace staff who understood the implications of its contents. Every day it remained hidden, the stakes felt higher. The envelope's disappearance created a tension that echoed through history, a suspense that would last for decades. The unanswered questions multiplied, leaving one central, urgent mystery. What was inside that made it so carefully protected for so long? Who really controlled the letter after Diana's death? The real answer wasn't in the archives, it was in private hands. Cameras flashed outside, and footsteps echoed in the palace halls as the long-hidden envelope finally resurfaced. August 15, 1997, Princess Diana had carefully penned a letter to Prince William. The air inside Kensington Palace reportedly felt electric when aides first handled it decades later. The scent of the paper and the delicate curves of her handwriting carried an urgency that time had not dulled. Staff and historians alike described it as heartfelt and precise, a mother's careful instructions to guide her son in a complicated world. Big reveal: the letter contained warnings and guidance for William that went far beyond ordinary advice. Diana reportedly wrote about the relentless attention of the media, cameras flashing, phones constantly ringing, reporters following every move. She warned her son that fame could distort truth and that public scrutiny could turn ordinary mistakes into scandals. She also mentioned palace advisors, people who could be helpful or harmful depending on their motives, and stressed the importance of choosing whom to trust carefully. Some drafts allegedly named scenarios William might face, but no official confirmation exists for every detail. Beyond practical advice, Diana's words were deeply personal. She reportedly urged William to stay strong, to make decisions based on his own judgment, and to protect his mental and emotional well-being. She wrote with a mother's love, pausing to underline certain words, emphasizing the seriousness of her guidance. Historians later called it a map for survival in the royal world, showing foresight that seemed almost prophetic. Each sentence reflected her awareness of how public life could feel isolating, even dangerous, and her hope that William would navigate it wisely. Here's the twist. The letter also included subtle warnings about family dynamics. While she expressed love and loyalty, Diana hinted at potential conflicts and manipulations behind closed doors. Some aides claimed they felt chills when reading these lines, sensing a protective urgency that could only come from a mother who understood both love and danger. Even now, decades later, the letter reveals insights that shaped William's future actions and decisions. It showed him how to balance loyalty with caution and love with self-preservation. The guidance was practical, emotional, and profoundly human, bridging the gap between a mother lost too soon and a son facing life under the constant gaze of the world. What remains striking is how Diana's foresight anticipated events that would unfold in the following decades. Some warnings reportedly came true in ways that William and the royal family could not have imagined at the time. Cameras outside may have captured flashes of the past, but the true impact of her words was private, careful, and deeply intentional. Which warnings in the letter came true in the years that followed? And that detail changes what happens next. The palace felt alive with tension. Phones buzzed, cameras flashed, and footsteps echoed through corridors as news of the letter's revelation spread in 2026. Kensington Palace staff watched nervously while journalists and media crews tried to capture every detail. Outside, the streets were filled with curious tourists, while reporters whispered about the letter that had been hidden for decades. The air carried a sense of urgency, everyone wanted answers, and everyone felt the weight of what Diana had written years ago. Once the contents were officially revealed, headlines exploded worldwide. Newspapers like The Guardian and broadcasters such as the BBC reported on Diana's warnings, highlighting her guidance about media scrutiny, palace politics, and personal trust. Online platforms lit up with speculation and discussion. People debated the impact of the letter on William's life, on the royal family, and on public perception. Cameras clicked relentlessly as historians, royal experts, and aides commented on the significance of the document. Reportedly, the letter clarified motives behind some of the palace's actions in the years following Diana's death. Some claimed that it helped explain why certain decisions were made during tense periods, from media crises to family disagreements. The public, previously unaware of the full extent of Diana's foresight, now saw a deeper layer of her wisdom. Social media erupted with commentary. Some praised her protective instincts, others wondered why it took decades for the letter to surface. Whispers of betrayal, caution, and careful planning ran through every story. Here's the twist. One subtle part of the letter, almost overlooked by the public, reportedly held a key insight into William's personal choices. While the major warnings about media and family were clear, this smaller note, buried among lines of advice, suggested guidance that shaped his decisions in later years, decisions about marriage, interviews, and public statements. Cameras outside did not capture the weight of this guidance, but insiders noted its significance. Historians reported that Diana had intended this letter to be a tool for survival, a map for her son to navigate the pressures of a royal life. Each sentence carried meaning, each pause a silent warning. The urgency she had felt in August 1997 was mirrored in the reactions of staff and the public nearly 30 years later. Even those who were not part of the royal family felt the tension, as if a mother's voice was still echoing through palace halls. The media frenzy also revealed the delicate balance between public curiosity and private protection. Many journalists respected certain details as sensitive, while others speculated about hidden meanings. Aides claimed that the palace monitored coverage closely, aware that misinterpretation could cause ripple effects. The sense of time pressure was palpable. Every article, every broadcast, seemed like a countdown to understanding the full impact of Diana's words. And then the hidden lesson became clear. The letter was not just historical, it was active, influencing William's actions decades later. The public saw the headlines, but only a few understood the depth of the guidance. The question lingered: which part of the letter had truly shaped William's choices, and how much of it remained private? The palace had revealed history, but the story of influence was far from over. Which hidden part of the letter shaped William's choices? But the story doesn't end there. This is where it turns. Footsteps echoed softly through Kensington Palace as Prince William reportedly reflected on his mother's words. The air was quiet, almost reverent, as aides observed from a distance. Cameras flashed outside, but inside the palace, the real story was personal, intimate, and filled with tension. The letter that Diana had written in August 1997, decades earlier, had quietly shaped his understanding of the world, his family, and the pressures of royal life. Every sentence seemed to carry a lesson, and every pause reflected a mother's foresight. Historians and royal experts claimed that the letter influenced William in subtle yet profound ways. Reportedly, parts of it guided his statements during his 2021 interviews, helping him navigate topics about family, media, and public perception. Advisors alleged that her warnings shaped decisions during crises in the 2010s, including moments when media scrutiny threatened to escalate tension within the royal household. The words on that fragile envelope became, in effect, an invisible guide, a mother's voice reaching across decades to protect her son. The letter reportedly emphasized careful judgment, the importance of trust, and the need to balance loyalty with self-preservation. Cameras outside may have captured headlines, but they did not capture the emotional weight of those lessons. Each piece of advice was practical and emotional at the same time, showing William how to navigate life under constant public scrutiny while remaining true to his own instincts. Some aides suggested that reading the letter was like holding a compass that pointed to both caution and courage. Here's the twist: even decades later, one part of Diana's guidance remained deeply private. It was reportedly subtle, almost hidden in the folds of her sentences, yet it influenced decisions William made quietly, without public acknowledgement. The lessons were not loud, but they were clear to him, guiding his approach to family, public statements, and media interactions. Historians describe this influence as a shadow map, an invisible framework that shaped how he faced challenges without ever showing the full picture to the public. The palace halls seemed to echo with the lessons of the letter. Reported insiders claimed that its guidance affected not only practical decisions but also emotional understanding. How William related to his siblings, how he approached challenges, and how he protected those he loved. It was a legacy of foresight, care, and love, hidden within the folds of a simple envelope. The words were not just historical, they were living advice, a quiet but powerful influence shaping one of the most watched lives in the world. The public may have seen the headlines, but the deepest impact remained private. Cameras captured the shock and curiosity, yet the full meaning, the subtle warnings, the quiet counsel, and the motherly guidance, was felt only by William. Whispers of the letter's influence continue among historians, experts, and aides, a reminder that some truths are meant to be lived, not broadcast. And now the central mystery looms. What part of Diana's advice remains secret forever, even with the letter finally revealed? It is a question that echoes in palace corridors, in William's decisions, and in the careful memory of those who knew the letter's significance. Some guidance will never be public, yet its impact is undeniable, a lasting legacy of a mother's love, foresight, and careful preparation. What part of Diana's advice will remain secret forever? And that's where the real trap is hidden. The envelope was finally open. Cameras flashed outside, but inside Kensington Palace, there was a quiet stillness. Prince William reportedly held the letter carefully, feeling the weight of his mother's words decades after she had written them. Historians called it a window into Diana's mind, showing her love, foresight, and guidance. Staff whispered, reflecting on how a single document had quietly shaped decisions, protected him, and preserved her voice through time. The public finally saw the letter in 2026. Newspapers and broadcasters highlighted the warnings, the advice, and the subtle guidance Diana had provided. Reported insiders said it revealed the careful balance she sought to teach: how to handle scrutiny, navigate palace rules, and protect one's emotional well-being. Cameras outside captured flashes, but the deeper lessons, the motherly foresight, the private counsel, remained intensely personal. Every sentence carried urgency and love, bridging the decades between Diana's life and the present. The story of the letter's secrecy, the lost envelope, and the eventual reveal resolved the mystery introduced in the hook. The fears, the warnings, and the advice were now known, answering the question of why it had been hidden for so long. Yet, some parts of Diana's guidance remain private, leaving one quiet reflection. Her influence continues, even decades later, quietly shaping her son's choices. What does this letter teach us about Diana's foresight and love? But even with closure, some truths remain hidden behind palace walls. What part of Diana's letter surprised you the most? If you could ask her one question, what would it be? Do you think her guidance changed how William handles life as a royal? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to subscribe now to uncover more hidden stories from the royal family's private world. Each secret, each warning, and each lost letter tells a story that cameras never capture, but we bring it to light. Be part of the conversation and explore the untold history behind the headlines.